A seemingly small gesture shattered my sense of stability, leaving me feeling as though my world was crumbling around me. The afternoon was serene, a moment where the world felt suspended in an almost eerie calm. The morning was consumed by cleaning and tending to the house, yet my body felt utterly exhausted. Time was slipping away, and it felt as though every fiber of my being was pleading for a moment of respite. After sending my husband Dirk off to work, I chose to indulge in a brief nap. At that moment, my nephew Ethan rapped on the door. At 24, Ethan had transformed into a striking young man, and lately, there was a noticeable change in him. It was subtle, yet I could sense the shift in the way he regarded me. "May I have a glance?" I couldn't quite grasp it. He had consistently embodied the quiet, respectful demeanor, and today was no exception, at least on the surface. "Aunt Laura, you seem weary," Ethan remarked as he entered the room. His voice was gentle, yet inviting. "Is there anything I can assist you with?" I offered a faint smile, my eyelids heavy with fatigue. "A back rub would be delightful if you're willing to oblige." He paused briefly, as if weighing his thoughts, before finally giving a nod. "I am fully aware of the precise source of the pain." Ethan's son settled in behind me, his fingers gently resting on my shoulders. His touch was assertive, bordering on excessive. I experimented with Torlax, yet there was an oddity in his hold, something intriguing, somewhat overly intentional. It was different from the familiar, carefree touch I used to receive from him in his younger days. This experience was unlike any other. He delved further into my muscles. For a brief moment, I attempted to ease the tension that was thickening in the room, but as his fingers trailed lower along my back, I couldn't ignore the unsettling sensation that he was overstepping boundaries. The atmosphere was laden with an unarticulated tension, something that quickened my heartbeat. "Quicken is indeed superior." Ethan's son's voice had dropped to a near whisper, so close that I could feel his breath on my neck, sending a shiver down my spine. I nodded, yet my body was anything but at ease. A voice within urged me to distance myself, yet I remained still. My thoughts were a whirlwind, attempting to unravel the meaning behind the way Ethan's hands lingered, just like his. The sensation of touch was not as it ought to be. Then he uttered a phrase that sent a jolt through me. "Your strength has been truly remarkable, Aunt Laura. It's time for you to experience something deeper." His words hung in the atmosphere. Just as I was about to reply, his hand moved lower, and I was paralyzed. The rhythm of my heartbeat pulsed in my throat, while Ethan's son's hands rested on my back. The walls felt as though they were inching closer, enveloping me in their confines. The atmosphere was charged with unease. I attempted to dismiss the turmoil churning within me, convincing myself that I was merely overanalyzing the situation. Yet there was something unique about his touch. His fingers pressed deeper, moving with an intention that seemed almost calculated, excessively personal for the context. My heart raced, yet I found myself unable to step back. "Aunt Laura, it's time for you to unwind." Ethan's voice flowed softly, a gentle murmur that caressed the air. "Your efforts for others are truly remarkable. Allow me the chance to look after you this time." He nodded, a flicker of uncertainty crossing his mind as he pondered his next move. A part of me felt compelled to intervene, to express that this was not the correct course of action. Yet, there was another side of me, one that had felt so burdened for an extended period, that simply yearned to surrender. I never wanted to be the one who constantly declined, the individual who consistently pushed back against assistance when it was extended. For a fleeting instant, I allowed myself to trust in his words. Yet a change occurred. His hands glided lower, skimming over spots that sent a shiver through me. My skin prickled beneath his touch, and I struggled to breathe, attempting to think clearly. Was this real, or was I merely imagining it? Was he pushing the limits? "And Laura, how are you doing?" Ethan's son's voice had dwindled to a mere whisper, and I sensed him leaning in closer, his breath warm against the nape of my neck. I stood still. I chose not to respond. I couldn't help but feel his hands sliding lower once more, perilously close to a place I wasn't entirely certain about. I wished for their departure. The warmth of his touch felt like a flame, seeping through the fabric of my shirt, causing me to shiver involuntarily. His presence enveloped me with an intensity one could hardly ignore. It felt as though the distance had vanished entirely. All limits vanished, and then suddenly, he murmured a phrase that coursed through me like electricity. "I have always observed you, Aunt Laura. Your beauty has always been undeniable. Did you find this gripping narrative of hidden truths and suspenseful moments captivating? Be sure to stay tuned for more captivating tales of betrayal. Like and subscribe for narratives that will challenge your perceptions and keep you on the edge of your seat." My thoughts faded into nothingness. His words resonated in my mind, and I struggled to grasp them quickly enough. What was he expressing? What was going on? I attempted to break free, yet Ethan's hand stayed resolutely on my back, anchoring me where I was. I tilted my head ever so slightly, just enough to catch a fleeting glimpse of his face. His eyes held a deep intensity, shadowed and taut. Typical tranquility transformed into an unfamiliar intensity. There was something that eluded my understanding. He had changed from the nephew I once knew. Something had shifted, and it felt as though I was trapped in a haunting dream. I was unable to. Awakened by Aunt Laura. "I simply want you to experience joy. You truly deserve it." The tension between us felt increasingly suffocating. The chaotic thoughts in my mind urged me to halt, to rise and escape, yet my body refused to obey, rendering me immobile. I found myself at a loss for what to do next. As if picking up on my uncertainty, Ethan swiftly took the reins and made a choice for us both. He moved closer, his lips almost touching my ear, his whisper sending a shiver down my spine. "Rest assured, Aunt Laura, I have no intention of causing you any harm." Yet there was a sharpness in his tone, an understated yet powerful presence that washed over me with a sense of foreboding. The warmth of Ethan's breath brushed against my ear, but I was unsure of how to respond to his words. Suspended in a moment thick with significance, I found myself unable to face him. It felt as if time had come to a standstill. It felt as if the walls were closing in around us, creating an inescapable situation. I found myself uncertain about whether I was still navigating the situation, or if I had merely grown indifferent to the suffocating pressure. My body tightened, battling against my thoughts. Yet, it appeared to hold no significance. His touch lingered far too long, excessively authoritative. I inhaled lightly, attempting to reflect on my own thoughts. I managed to say Ethan, stop, but my voice trembled. It wasn't a command. It was a heartfelt appeal. Yet he persisted. He hardly reacted. Instead, his hand glided further down my back, tracing the curve of my spine, until I felt his fingertips lightly graze the waistband of my pants. My heart raced, pounding in my chest, while my skin felt as though it was ablaze. I felt the urge to distance myself in order to raise my voice. Yet not a single sound broke free from my lips. I sensed his fingers tracing purposeful circles, his touch nearly enchanting. "Isla," Ethan whispered, his voice low and imbued with an unfamiliar intensity. "It is your right to experience emotions. It's impressive how resilient you've always been. For all others. Isn't it important to prioritize your own well-being?" I felt an overwhelming urge to shout and create distance between us, yet my body remained still. I felt as though I was ensnared within my own flesh, powerless to escape the hold he had over me, not only in a physical sense but also on an emotional level. A fierce urge surged within me, demanding that I rise and put an end to this chaos. However, I was unable to do so. I was unable to discover the language, the power to detach. In an instant, I sensed Ethan's hands halt, his fingertips resting softly against my skin. As he spoke once more, his voice had taken on a gentler tone. "Additional persuasion. Your beauty is captivating. Aunt Laura, your beauty has always shone through. There's no reason to conceal it. His words penetrated my being, igniting a slow, smoldering flame within. I found it impossible to meet his gaze. I found myself unable to confront him, yet somehow I could. I sense his gaze upon me, observing each response, each inhalation I took, and it felt as though he was anticipating something. Anticipating my contribution. In anticipation of my release from the confines I had meticulously constructed over the years. The allure of his presence was undeniable. There was an essence in his being. Engaging in conversation with me. There was an undeniable quality in his touch that rendered any attempt to distance myself futile. My mind and body were in conflict, each vying for dominance. Every urgent platform, exit strategy. Yet just as abruptly as it began, Ethan came to a halt. His hands withdrew, and the atmosphere in the room felt as if it had shattered, like a rubber band stretched to its limit. For a fleeting instant the air escaped me. My chest feels constricted, my thoughts are a whirlwind. I pivoted to confront him. My eyes were wide, filled with confusion, examining his face for any hint, any reason. Yet there was an absence. It was simply a serene and composed appearance that achieved the desired effect. Even more disconcerting, Ethan's son grinned. His expression softened, as though nothing had transpired. "Are you all right, Aunt Laura?" I acknowledged with a nod, at a loss for words. Conflicted and uncertain, I found myself grappling with a fear that stemmed not only from the recent events but also from the implications they held for what lay ahead. Yet there was one thing I was absolutely sure of. This instant. This sensation would linger with me for an extended period. I found myself seated in that moment. My thoughts have come to a standstill, frantically assembling the scattered remnants of what had just transpired. Ethan's abrupt change in attitude, his tranquility. His demeanor suggested that nothing had shifted at all, left me in a state of shock. I ought to have said for him to go and never return. However, I was unable to. A peculiar sense of guilt was eating away at me, as if I had permitted something to happen. Something occurs without interruption. At last, clarity emerged from the chaos. My heart pounded with intensity. Yet, I was unable to summon the courage to voice my thoughts as Ethan's son rose to his feet. He stretched his arms, as if he had just assisted me with a typical back rub. The expression was laid back, somewhat apathetic perhaps. It was yet another day spent gazing at him. Each breath feels like a weight on my chest, tightening with every inhale. He appeared remarkably composed, entirely unbothered. "Are you really feeling all right, Aunt Laura's?" Zethan inquired, his tone earnest as if nothing had occurred. He was toying with me, and it sent a wave of unease through my gut. I felt an overwhelming urge to shout at him, to express everything I was holding inside. All that I experienced. The unease, the bewilderment, the revulsion. Yet the words became lodged in my throat. "Yes, I'm doing well." I ultimately found the words to express myself. Although the deception had a bitter flavor, I managed to put on a smile. Although I sensed a heavy weight pressing down on me, burdened by the gravity of recent events, I needed to escape from him. I needed to escape that room. Yet Ethan's son had more to say. I noticed it reflected in his gaze. The well-known predatory glimmer that once existed. His presence earlier was nearly overwhelming. I rose to my feet, striving to project an air of confidence, masking the turmoil that had shaken me to my very foundation. As I approached the door, Ethan positioned himself in front of me, obstructing my path. "Aunt Laura." His voice was nearly a whisper, enticing, yet an ominous presence lingered just out of sight. "It's clear that you don't need to act as if everything is fine. Feel free to share your thoughts with me. I'm here to support you." I attempted to navigate around him, yet his hand darted forward, softly taking hold of my wrist. The touch was gentle, yet it coursed through me like a jolt of electricity. My heart raced as I gazed into his eyes, hand hesitating to connect with his gaze. I felt compelled to urge him to release his grip. I need to express that he should distance himself from me. Yet my body refused to comply. I felt completely immobilized, constrained within this oppressive atmosphere. The time has come when you can be completely open with me. He persisted in the gentle caress of his thumb. Cross my skin. I understand that you've been feeling overwhelmed. Laura, I am here to assist. Together we can help you find a sense of comfort and relief. It doesn't need to be this difficult. I felt the urge to withdraw, to create distance. Yet his hold became firm enough for me to sense it. Just sufficient to instill a sense of uncertainty within me. A warm sensation spread across my skin, my body deceiving me in ways I never anticipated. Comprehend, Ethan. I murmured my words. Unsteady if you would. Release it. Take a brief pause. He merely remained in place. His stare, secured in my grasp. He was assessing me, interpreting me. The atmosphere was charged, heavy with an almost unbearable intensity. It felt as though everything was teetering on the brink of an unacknowledged truth, a reality I was reluctant to confront at last. Here I find only the distance that separates us. Experienced a sense of insignificance. His smile was smaller than ever, seemed nearly too serene. Rest assured, Aunt Laura, there's no need to worry. He spoke in a gentle whisper. I'm simply here to assist. I will forever embody the essence of language. It sent a shiver down my spine. I compelled myself to stride by him. My heart continues to race. As I approached the door, I listened to his words. This is your final chance. There's no escaping it now. I have faith that you'll return to me. The door slammed shut behind me. However, his words resonated in my thoughts like a haunting refrain. A vow that left me questioning my ability to break free. Ethan's words lingered in my mind, refusing to fade away. You will return to me. Their echoes lingered in my thoughts, relentless and unyielding. What was he trying to convey with that? What was attempting to evoke in me? I realized it was time to escape. Yet, each time I believed I was seizing the reins. The following morning, I realized I was sinking further in. I rose with the dawn, restless and unable to find solace in slumber, haunted by the memory of Ethan's touch, the manner in which his words sent shivers down my spine. And yet, simultaneously, it left me with a peculiar sense of vulnerability. I attempted to convince myself that it was insignificant. Perhaps it was simply an odd miscommunication, fleeting lapse in strength. Yet, beneath the surface, I was aware of the truth. I rose from my slumber, attempting to dispel the persistent musings that clung to my mind. Yet they adhered to me as if woven into my very being while I made my way to the kitchen. I found myself hoping that Ethan's son would keep his distance. However, when I spotted him seated at the morning spread, his gaze locked onto mine, exuding a disquieting serenity. It felt as if Heck possessed an all-encompassing knowledge, as if he had been anticipating his arrival, to accept and understand it. Whatever it was morning. Aunt Laura, the song of Ethan, welcomed me with a smile that fell flat. Meet his gaze. I couldn't find the motivation to reply without delay. I merely nodded and attempted to carry on as if nothing had occurred. I approached the counter ready to make coffee, but my hands trembled with uncertainty. His gaze was unmistakably fixed on me, and it made everything feel excessively constricted, incredibly authentic. There was something a bit different about you last night, he remarked. His tone was relaxed. It was as though he were attempting to find humor in the events that unfolded. Is all well? I was at a loss for words. What would make it possible for me to decline? Everything feels off. You have gone too far. And now I find it impossible to see you in the same light. Once more, I was unable to. I simply couldn't discover the language. I'm doing well, he stated, extracting the words with effort. I turned to face him in the meeting. His eyes sought to convey a sense of power. I feel utterly exhausted. Ethan's son remained silent. In an instant, he cast a glance my way that spoke volumes. He was observing me closely, the look on his face, incomprehensible at that point. If nothing had shifted, he wore that same disquieting grin. There's no need to take things so seriously. Constantly, he spoke with a smooth voice. My only desire is for you to experience joy. Aunt Laura, you truly deserve that, don't you? His tone carried a nauseating sweetness, as he once was, attempting to ease the influence. I hope this message finds you well. I wanted to reach out because I've been thinking about some recent developments that have raised my concern. It's important to me that we address these issues thoughtfully and carefully. Please let me know your thoughts on this matter. Yet I was aware of the deeper chaos. A chill crept along my spine. My intuition, shouting at me to leave. I'm doing well, Ethan. I asserted my voice more firmly this time. Moments I preferred to keep hidden from him. How deeply impacted I was. His mere presence was beginning to stir doubts within me. I picked up my coffee mug and strolled into the living room. Or anything. Seeking some distance. Seeking space. However, the son of Ethan. They didn't allow me to slip away so effortlessly. He trailed behind me, remaining upright. Entrance. The way he carries himself. Laid back. Yet his gaze was piercing. This is something you can't escape, Aunt Laura. He spoke, his voice now a whisper. Barely audible. Understand. Last night you experienced a sensation. And I understand your desire for more. I suspended the impact of his words colliding with me. My heart raced. I sought to elevate my thoughts in search of an answer. A method to refute his proposition. But nothing followed his words. Suspended in the atmosphere, tainting the surroundings. Among us. This is not something I wish to listen to. I declare it. My voice quivered, even with all my attempts to steady it. It is essential to retain the gaze of Ethan's son. Shrouded in shadows for a fleeting instant. Yet, he let out a gentle laugh as if he truly was. Relishing each moment of my unease. This is inescapable. Laura, we have established a connection now. Regardless of your feelings on the matter. The oppressive tension was unbearable. My head was any longer. Whirling my emotions. A relentless pounding in my chest. This was an issue I couldn't overlook. Not any longer, but was it truly possible for me to confront him? Could I escape the grip he had on me? Just as I was on the verge of replying, the front door creaked open, breaking the silence of the room. My heart raced with excitement. There was my husband Greg coming home from work. The leaf that swept across me was immediate, yet it was intertwined with apprehension. What if he had sensed the strain that lingered in the air between us? What if he had already unraveled the mystery? Hello everyone, Greg remarked, gazing. Between us, his gaze darted with worry. Is everything all right? In this moment I struggled to find a smile. Indeed, all is well, I replied. I attempted to maintain a facade of normalcy, but deep down I was aware of the deception, and Greg could feel it too. He moved in closer, gazing at Ethan and then at me. Are you certain? Either option works. Both appear somewhat unusual. Son was the initial one to reply. His voice flowed effortlessly. His face an inviting canvas. In the realm of purity, all is well. Uncle Greg is having a conversation with Aunt Laura. She's feeling a bit overwhelmed, but it's nothing major. Greg nodded, yet the doubt lingered in his gaze. It felt as though he sensed that something was amiss. For the first time, I sensed the walls closing in around me. Ethan's son's hold on me was becoming more intense, and I found myself at a loss for how to escape it. The days that followed that morning felt heavy and uncertain, as if in a haze. The sensation of Ethan's gaze lingering on me was inescapable. His words reverberate in my mind. Our connection is established regardless of your feelings about it. It felt like he had sown a seed within my thoughts. And now it was expanding, contorting everything into something. It felt unsettling and heavy each time our paths crossed. A shiver ran down my spine, yet I found myself unable to break free from his grasp. He seemed to be omnipresent, carrying on as if everything was perfectly fine. He would offer a smile. With that unsettling tranquility, you gaze at me. All I could manage was a rigid, strained smile. I began to steer clear of him, crafting excuses to escape the house and dedicating extended hours to my job, feigning concentration on matters unrelated to the intricate tapestry he was crafting. No matter how much I attempted to create space, his presence lingered, lurking in the shadows, anticipating my moment of weakness. It was one fateful evening, returning home late from a meeting, that the entire situation unraveled. I stepped through the threshold of the house, anticipating the familiar quiet. Yet on this occasion there was an unmistakable change. The illumination was subdued, the gentle murmur of the television enveloping the room, and I instantly sensed a disquiet in my chest. I entered the living room, and there he stood. Ethan is seated, a couch, his posture at ease. But in that instant his gaze was fixed on me, chill and methodical. "Aunt Laura, you've returned home quite late." His voice carried an undertone that eluded my understanding. I stood still. In that moment, the realization of our solitude in the house washed over me. Greg. I had toiled late into the night, finding myself alone with Ethan's son. I ought to have experienced a sense of relief, I reminded myself. Yet the air felt dense, almost stifling. I needed to complete some tasks. I stumbled over my words, striving to maintain a calm tone. Ethan's son remained still. He simply gazed at me with that same unsettling intensity. "It's clear you don't need to put on a facade, Aunt Laura. I understand that our relationship has faced challenges." My breath caught in my throat. My heart pounded with intensity. Yet I remained frozen, too fearful to look back. "Could you clarify what you mean?" He wore a smile, yet it lacked warmth. It was a grin that sent a shiver through my very being. A smile that left me feeling vulnerable and laid bare. "I understand your true thoughts." He spoke in a low voice, almost playfully teasing. "It seems you've been keeping your distance, haven't you? You feel fear. Fearful of our actions. Fearful of our potential actions once more." He took a moment to stop, allowing the words to linger in the atmosphere. "However, that is not possible. Steer clear of it for all time. Aunt Laura, I am present and will remain so always." My breath quickened, and my thoughts surged like a wild river. I needed to escape this place. I needed to step away before things escalated. As I stepped back, I found Ethan already positioned right in front of me, obstructing my way. His body was near, almost too near. The warmth emanated from him, palpable and intense. "Regarding Laura," he murmured gently, his tone unexpectedly gentle, nearly coming. "There's no need to struggle against this. You lack to continue the facade. I understand the significance of this for you, how deeply you desire it." I felt the urge to distance myself from him, shout and seek assistance. However, I found myself unable to do so. My body became immobile. His words wove a captivating enchantment, myself, causing me to reevaluate all my beliefs. His Han extended a hand, gently grazing my arm, a gentle jolt coursing through my being. "I understand that you're feeling afraid," he murmured, drawing nearer. "However, it's all right. Rest assured you can rely on me." And for a fleeting instant, just a fleeting instant, I nearly succumbed to belief. My heart raced for him, the realm of my thoughts, a whirlwind of clashing ideas. Can I rely on him? Was I truly just a pawn in someone else's game? Or was there a fragment of my being that lacked the strength to withstand? Out of nowhere, the front door creaked open. The opening broke the stillness. It was indeed Greg. Ethan soon withdrew. His expression shifted immediately, reverting to that serene, innocent facade as he conversed with Aunt Laura. He spoke with a smooth cadence. His voice resonated with a unique quality. Simple as always. No need for concern. He nodded, yet my mind wandered to distant realms. I couldn't focus on Ethan's son. I allowed my defenses to slip for the remainder of the evening. It rushed by in a haze while I reclined in bed afterward. Ethan's words echoed in my mind. His caress. Everything had become overwhelming. The conclusion had not yet arrived. I realized that he was no longer going to pause for anything.